Hey, how's it going out there, folks? Welcome back here to a Tuesday. It is the Earthmaster out here, 10:20 a.m. That's California time here, February 12th or 11th, 2025. Getting ahead of myself here. Latest activity here on the earthquake 3D globe shows a 2.5 across the area of the Santorini volcano region. Still seeing quite a bit of earthquake activity out there, mainly clustered around just outside the Colombo region. The underwater volcano, the seamount submarine volcano, I believe is the correct word for that. A lot of volcanoes out here in terms of that volcanic arc. Earthquakes of 3.0 and above, we got 239 of them in the last 2 days. That's still a pretty significant event. Now, if we bring up the all magnitudes here, last 24 hours, we got 232. And, of course, the total tally here, at least I believe in the last week or so, 1,500 earthquakes there with, of course, that migration fashion stretching down towards the Santorini volcano. But I'd say in the last couple days here, most of the activity has been confined to the original swarm region, which is it's just interesting how this whole process is evolving. And whether this is leading up to, potentially an eruption or something bigger in the area. I'm still leaning more towards that volcanic potential, as this has somewhat of the key indicators that I would look for when it comes to magma building up underneath the region, including some migration down here with some of the bigger quakes, the 4s, and even a couple 5s down here towards the Santorini area, one directly underneath the that crater area within the caldera. Excuse me. Turn on the mic, and then it turns on my cough for some reason. This earthquake here, a little three-pointer, directly underneath the Santorini caldera, 6 kilometers deep there a few days ago. But just kind of watching it here, folks. The seismograph station in the area is still quite active. As you can see, this is the last 24 hours. Showing all the earthquakes that are happening there around the Santorini, Greece area. Now, as far as anything of significant measurements here, let's go ahead and take a look from the USGS map. There it is again in that cluster area. Not a whole lot of migration recently in the last 24 hours, but previous to that, we've seen that migration pattern. But this could obviously, evolve further and escalate further. So it's not going down. 14 earthquakes that the USGS is reporting, including a couple 5s there from yesterday. So far today, the largest appears to be a 4.9 earthquake here. Had a couple 4s last night. The last one, a 4.5. In the cluster of earthquakes there. It depends on who you ask. A lot of people stating this is just earthquake activity along fault systems here. But, man, this is by far the most extraordinary earthquake swarm on a fault system that I've ever seen in my life, if that is indeed the case. Okay, anyway. Looking across the area here, and there's not a whole lot of new updates on Santorini area. From Volcano Discovery. It's just a waiting game. Can't really do much until we know what's going to happen or this completely dies off. A little bit of movement further up north along the line here. 4.6 coming in well off the plate boundary here. In the red circle, that coming in within the last hour. A little bit of earthquake activity further across the region in Morocco, 5.1. From yesterday, let's take a look at the earthquake 3D globe, see what we have here. A couple aftershocks following that 5-pointer up along the area up here. Atlantic Ocean, though, pretty quiet, not a whole lot going on. Overnight, let's see what we got. Not a whole lot of larger scale activity. Across the Indonesia Islands area, still seeing some movement across Java Trench. Japan, fairly quiet, some older quake activity there on the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench from yesterday. A little clustering going on here around Taiwan, but overall, nothing major happening across Japan for now. New Zealand, roughly about the same. Just some threes down there across North Island. Southern end of the Kermadec Trench, a 4-pointer. California. Let's go ahead and check out California right now. See what's going on. Late last night, just after midnight, 4.1 hit in the area of Northern California. This is the area that had the 7-pointer. Remember, back in early December, the earthquake I felt, and got a 20-second notification there from the early alert earthquake app before I felt the waves here around Chico from that earthquake. And whether you want to call this aftershock activity or just further pressurization of the area, it's increasing. And it kind of makes sense here because yesterday, a lot of activity stirring up there in Southern California. Eventually, it does find its way up the plate boundary here, where it ended last night there with a 4.1. Not a whole lot else going on up north here across the Cascadia. Just been seeing a swarm of movement here across this region. And, you know, the officials would like to say this is just all aftershock activity, but it's a very dynamic region here. You know, we could have a bigger quake out here, and they could say the 7-pointer back in December was a foreshock, and all these are foreshocks. So it's just plate tectonics at work. When strain is increasing, earthquakes will happen. That's exactly what's taking place there. We got strain out here along the west coast. Bay Area pretty quiet aside from, well, we got one earthquake there on the Hayward Fault, roughly about the same time. Look at that, zero. It was just after midnight, 16 minutes, so 12:16 a.m. Literally just a couple minutes after this movement up north here. So definitely seen some broader scale adjustment across the area of California yesterday and today, down across the San Andreas Fault. One earthquake here. Looks to be the only one so far after midnight, a 1.3 yesterday. Had a decent amount of swarming here in this area, including a couple threes. We have to bring up technically the last 7 days to see that earthquake activity that happened yesterday, but earlier in the morning, so it's off the 24-hour threshold. But 3 threes, a bunch of ones, and surprisingly no twos. Now that I find rather interesting there, that there would be no twos out there. So right now, a 1.3 San Andreas Fault, the southern segment. Nothing big happening now, but it's still remaining quite active out here. If we look at the last, we've got to bring up again the last 7 days to see the 2.5 models. And this is a lot more active than just your daily events. So yesterday, more specifically, was a little uptick, very noticeable uptick across areas of Southern California and Northern California here. One earthquake, that was a few days ago, 2.6, 21 miles deep here, associated with the Cascadia subduction zone that sits right offshore here. That is not a surface earthquake. It's 21 miles deep in this area, so that's associated with that subduction zone there, Cascadia. But elevated activity, and we've seen that across the San Andreas Fault, Ridgecrest area, even some movement here across the Garlock Fault shear zone. Nothing new today here anyway across that Garlock Fault shear zone. Nothing across the Malibu Coast Fault. I was expecting that to fill in, and I say that because during our heightened periods last year where we've seen numerous 4s out here, including a 5-pointer outside of Bakersfield here, things were elevated across numerous fault systems, including the Malibu Coast Fault. But nothing happening on that right now. It could fill in, though, with this event that we're seeing. A couple earthquakes across Los Angeles, including the Puente Hills Thrust Fault. That region had a couple earthquakes on it, 1.6 and a 1-pointer. Let's see here. So aside from that, on the San Andreas Fault, San Jacinto Fault zone here looks fairly typical. Not anything major going on there. Ridgecrest area, from yesterday, some activity, including a 3.3. Today, quite a few 1s out there in the mix. You pretty much draw a line here from about this swarm happening in north of Las Vegas. That's the other thing. During the events last year, when things were elevated out here, swarms started kicking up in western Nevada. So this earthquake swarm's been continuing for a little while here outside of Las Vegas. That's an overall sign and pattern of pretty much strain out here against the west coast, the plate boundary itself. That's how you get that strain building up, right, due to the plate boundary. So this area, roughly right here, can pretty much draw an arrow, a left pointing arrow, and that matches what you see there on the map. The shear zone underneath a lot of strain due to the accumulation of strain coming up from the south here. The San Andreas Fault putting the strain up here north, and then we'll see some activity stretching inland away from that shear zone like the Ridgecrest area and movement further off towards Las Vegas. So this whole area still, man, I'm telling you, it's a scary event that will take place there one day. Northern Nevada, a couple small earthquakes up around the Sheldon contiguous area. Used to be called the Sheldon National Antelope Refuge. 2.6 this morning. A lot of volcanic activity up there in the past. Way in the past. A lot of obsidian. I was driving on obsidian rocks for miles. I'm surprised I didn't get any flat tire. Up in Idaho, a little earthquake up there around Mullen, Idaho. Way up north here of the Sawtooth Fault system. Sawtooth Fault sits down south here. Normally that's fairly active. That a little 3.3. Not for sure which fault system that's associated with, but a little bit of movement up there last night. Yellowstone National Park. Looks like we got a little swarm stirring up here. A bunch of earthquake activity there in the 2 range. So let's go check it out, shall we? And then we'll check out the Santorini area. I got a lot of information here on the asteroid 2024 YR4 that I'm studying. So let's use this one for now, and then we'll come back to it. I'm putting together a little presentation here soon for the for that asteroid that's got a decent chance of hitting us in 2032. That's a ways down the road, right? A lot of stuff can happen and change, but it's one of the more promising impacts here from asteroids that I've seen in a little while. So Yellowstone having a little spitter spatter of an event. You guys can see that quite nicely there across the park. Pretty intense earthquake swarm for a very short period of time. That's what I call a spitter spatter event. Yellowstone just spitting out earthquakes in the 2 range for a short sequence of events there. About 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock or so. In this little fashion, you can see it all across the park, centered within the Yellowstone caldera, southern end here, which sits something like this, an oval type shape. I need to bring up my draw on the screen here so you guys can see without just trying to follow a arrow that is not really showing anything. But that's the area. And these guys showing about 11 earthquakes, the largest a 2.4. Now 11 earthquakes here. You could probably multiply that by 3 and get the real number of earthquakes that took place out here last night, early this morning. Because 11 earthquakes, you can count that probably within this first little sequence. But take a look at that. There's way more than 11. Each of these little seismograph signals are indeed earthquakes. The largest, 2.1? Or 2.4. And then looks like a couple minutes later at 2.1. So there's your 2.4, 2.1, somewhere in that mix as well. And this is really not that big of a deal for Yellowstone. It does have some swarming on occasion like that. It's been a little while since we've seen a spitter spatter event like that, but looks like the epicenter area right around Riddle Lake, just outside the Lake Yellowstone area. A couple other earthquakes out there. Just after midnight at 2.6 down here. Some from yesterday. The majority, again, confined to this region of Riddle Lake. Riddle me this. Why is there earthquakes at Yellowstone? Well, because they have earthquakes, right? It's a super volcano. Not really concerned about volcanic activity. This is occurring 3 to 7 kilometers or 3 to 7 miles deep or so. And if you think about the activity yesterday, seen a wide swath of elevated seismic events there across the west coast, there in California. Nevada's seen a swarm. Looks like a lot of that pressurization is heading inland. Idaho showing that pressurization up north with a 3.3. Now Yellowstone. I believe that's plate tectonics out here, the strain coming into the area. But we'll have to watch that and see if it kicks back up or not. Yeah, right outside of Yellowstone Lake there. These are in miles, so what do we got? About 20 miles deep underneath that area, is that right? 15 miles deep? Goodness. Is that what the USGS was stating? No. They're stating a little bit less there. But anyway, it's a little interesting event. Continue to watch that. But it looks as though that swarm has died down as of 3-4 o'clock in the morning. As you can see in the last few hours, not a whole lot of earthquake activity. But it's interesting nonetheless. And I've checked out the GPS measurements out here. For the most part, the land is subsiding here. 2008, 2009, I think we've seen some elevated uptick. But specifically around this area, this is a seismograph station very close to the Riddle Lake, right? This is at Yellowstone Lake here. Just a few short miles north is that seismograph or the GPS station here. And as you can see, this is a station adjustment, antenna adjustment probably more than likely, or maybe even an instrument change. But this was going down. This happens to show an up because of the adjustment. But overall pattern's been going down. Back in 2014, 2015, we had a couple months long earthquake swarm there in the summertime, I believe, around Lake Yellowstone. And that's when we've seen a little bit of uptick here. But since then, as you can see, since 2015, 2016, we've been going down with no signs of any elevated uptick. These little periodic seasonal upticks here are ground swelling, I believe, in the springtime after the snow melt. But we're going down. No signs of uptick here. Just a little bit of earthquake activity. That's why, if this was swelling like it did back in 2014, 2015, then that's an indicator there of magma pressurization underneath the region. But we've been going down here. So no signs of anything going up. That's why I believe this is probably stress related out here, just due to all the movement out across the western area of the plate boundary. That's where the strain tends to accumulate, right? The interaction between the two massive plates, Pacific and the North American plate, putting a little bit of strain, thousands of, this is what, 800-900 miles or so across the area from the plate boundary. But it may seem like a lot to you and me. Nice little drive from California up there, but in geology terms, this is just a neighbor, a little short distance from the pressure out here across the west coast inland. Oil fields getting hit with some activity there across the Texas area. Earthquake activity, 2s and 1s, nothing big, but they are out there in the oil fields of Texas. New Madrid seismic zone, a little 1.9 early this morning. That is another hazardous area for the country. Take a look at the earthquake 3D globe here, see what we have across the region. Again, there's nothing major happening out there across the western Pacific. That includes Japan. Chile area, Middle America Trench, pretty quiet. A little aftershock sequence there from that 7-pointer down here. Got a 4.3. That, of course, being the largest earthquake so far this year, 7.6 there outside of the Georgetown, Cayman Islands region. So some aftershock sequences there spread out along the plate boundary. That's the largest earthquake there recorded ever. 7.5 quite a few years back, but specifically for that area, 7.6 is the strongest. Hawaii, from what I hear, Hawaii jumped back in on the eruption news here overnight. I don't want to restore pages. I just want Kilauea Volcano to pop up, and I'll be happy. There we go. Here's the latest update put out this morning from the USGS. Occasional spatter from the north vent has been visible since this morning. Inflation continues at the summit, and glow intensified last night, indicating that magma column is rising within the vent. So let's go check out one of these webcams, see what we have. Can't really see the glowing right now, but apparently it was there last night. Maybe even looks like come to a pause again, or let's go check out the deformation out here. See if we lost any volume of magma. It doesn't look like it. So maybe the eruption hasn't begun yet. Otherwise, we would see a drop. So it looks like it may be just about ready to. I wouldn't doubt if it does it sometime during the day today with that length of time and that glowing that was observed last night into the crater area of Kilauea Volcano. That pretty much matches the level last seen. So by tonight, that'll probably be an eruption stage. Just a rinse and repeat cycle out there with Kilauea Volcano recently. All right, what do we got here? Just one more earthquake since I've been yakking out here. 1.2 on the San Jacinto fault zone. Let's check out space. Well, can't forget the volcano over here, right? I mean, that's really, I really can't state anything other than what I know here on this volcano. It's just consistently active here. Bunch of fives, bunch of fours. No eruption as of yet. Got to watch the depth of these earthquakes. That's a key. 10, 7, 54 kilometers right now. Is that right? For a four-pointer that just came in right now, 1839. So that was just a short couple minutes ago. That's rather interesting if that's the case. I mean, who knows? Maybe the activity down here, the Ethiopia rift boundary, that is obviously a result of spreading a rift boundary here, right? Spreading of the continental crust, going to create a new sea out there eventually. But what is creating that, right? The convection and everything that's underneath this region. Maybe we got some big, huge blob underneath there of, well, obviously we do, but maybe something's trying to come up. I mean, 54 kilometers deep here. That's a interesting deep earthquake away from the region. Still, I mean, it's still somewhat in there, but outside the swarming area. Furthest towards the north here. I tell you guys, this is not just your typical earthquake swarm. This is going to be studied and probably put in the record books here. But no one really knows specifically what's going to take place. Let me, did that show up on the seismograph station there? That was just a couple minutes ago, about 5 minutes ago. I don't know how delayed this one is. Let's see if it showed up on this station. This is a 10-minute time period. Maybe one of these earthquakes here. Looks like we're getting some deeper quakes showing up on a station that's over here to the northeast of this earthquake swarm. Interesting. So we'll continue to watch it, folks. I mean, do I know what's going to happen? Does anyone know what's specifically going to happen? I doubt it. Unless you got a crystal ball or you're a time traveler, no one knows exactly what's going to happen. I look at the facts, I look at the data, and I put my education behind that, and I see what I see out here. And doesn't look like just earthquake activity. Space weather, well, a little bit of crackling going on. Sea flare activity from an active area way out on the south, well, out on the eastern limb here of the sun. Notice that bright feature out there from a sunspot. That's, let's take a look here. I don't believe that's 3990. I believe it's one behind it. Probably back over here. I don't even know if you can just barely see it here, the magnetic complexity way out. Not quite visible yet. This area, really not too concerned with, but very possible we have a little bit more active area out there yet to see here in the coming days, as it is currently flaring with some sea flare activity. Here's that sunspot, the big one, but it's really not all that. It's not doing that much right now. So there's definitely another area back behind the eastern limb. 10% chance for X flare, M flare at 55, C flare at 99% chance. No major roars in the forecast. It looks like they've added a G1 class storm maybe later down the road here. Really not expecting much, though, in terms of any dramatic aurora experiences out here anytime soon. Quick glance at the severe weather potential tomorrow. Got some severe weather out across the south. Looking at some tornado potential. Big, huge area out in the jungle. They call this the jungle here, the storm chasers do. A lot of trees. Beautiful area, but a lot of trees. And you want to see what's coming at you, right? And it's kind of hard to when you got all that forested area. So we got a huge 5% chance, 2% chance tornado there in the green. Looks like a little bit of wind. Not much of a hail threat, but big day for some tornado potential down there tomorrow. It's going to be Wednesday, day 2. Day 1, not a huge threat. Looks like maybe a little 2% chance for some tornado activity confined to these little 2% regions. A little bit of wind, and a little bit of hail. Texas knows how to get the hail done. That's for sure. All right, California waiting on another strong system out here as we put the GFS forecasted models in run. There it is, aimed right at the Bay Area of San Francisco. San Francisco, California, right there, getting in on the atmospheric river event. That rainfall is going to stretch all the way down to Southern California as well. So these guys are expecting a soaking. Expect some mudslides there across the recent burn scars. After that, a lot of cold air across the rest of the country. California dries back out again. That's a very similar pattern to what we've seen in January, where we had absolutely no rain. Well, maybe a quarter of an inch of rain early January, but that was about it. I do not like that pattern, and it looks like it's going to come in to play after this next storm system this week. So cold, snowy, icy, as it should be in the wintertime, right? Across the areas east of the Rockies there. Enjoy the cold. All right, China Lake is offline. Don't know why, but it's a very important station there I'd like to monitor. Hopefully it comes back. If not, I'll have to add a different one. But seismograph stations out there look pretty quiet for now. Just got an earthquake notification. Just a 3-pointer up in Alaska, it looks like. Let's see. There wasn't one in Alaska, but also some earthquake activity there in the Greece area. Once again, a 4-pointer and a 3-pointer. Continued rock and rolling out there across the area of the Santorini volcano area. Yeah, some of those are deep earthquakes underneath the region. 54 kilometers deep for that quake. Goodness. Yeah, that's not fracture related. That is something brewing out here, folks. We'll see. Time will tell. Right? My dad always used to say, well, time will tell. And that goes for anything, right? Anything. Time will tell. All right. I'm out of here, folks. Have yourself a good day. Just stay safe. No one knows exactly what's going to happen, but we do know history tells us that California gets big earthquakes, and the San Andreas Fault is 300 years primed. That's a lot of offset that's going to be taking place here when the release does finally come. Just stay safe out there. We'll catch you guys out here a little bit later.